So have you ever wondered what happens when a court realizes a law is fundamentally unfair, but completely destroying that law would cause absolute chaos? Like, how do you fix a broken law without ruining it for everyone else who actually relies on it? It's a fascinating legal puzzle, and it sits right at the center of today's explainer.
Hello, and welcome. Today, we are looking at a truly incredible piece of legal history from the Constitutional Court of South Africa. Its case, CCT 10/99, often known as the National Coalition for Gay and Lesbian Equality versus the Minister of Home Affairs. Now, what makes this case so captivating isn't just the human rights victory, though that is huge. It's the mechanical, almost surgical way the court had to fundamentally change our understanding of how broken laws are actually fixed.
All right, let's dive into our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the immigration dilemma. Second, equality and dignity. Third, the equal graveyards problem. And fourth, the reading in remedy.
Starting with Part 1, the immigration dilemma, focusing specifically on Section 25(5) of the Aliens Control Act. Right at the heart of this entire dispute was a specific, pretty formidable barrier found in South Africa's Aliens Control Act of 1991. Basically, this act controlled who could enter and reside in the country, and it granted fast-tracked immigration to specific groups. But the crucial word in the law was spouse. The act explicitly interpreted a spouse as a married person in an opposite-sex relationship. This meant the law perfectly protected traditional marriages, but it completely and entirely shut out same-sex partners.
In the real world, this created a devastating double standard. Heterosexual spouses of South African permanent residents were easily granted immigration permits to keep their families together. Same-sex partners, on the other hand, were forced to beg for temporary administrative exemptions just to stay in the country. They faced this constant looming threat of forced separation or having to emigrate entirely just to keep their relationships intact.
And you know, the build-up to the lawsuit was incredibly frustrating for the couples involved. Following the 1994 elections, gay and lesbian advocacy groups actually had cordial, promising discussions with the Department of Home Affairs. Between April and November of 1997, the government even granted several temporary exemptions. But then, abruptly, on January 9, 1998, the government issued a blanket refusal. They flat out declared that same-sex relationships did not constitute special circumstances for an exemption. The door was just slammed shut.
Moving into Part 2, equality and dignity, and the resulting constitutional clash.
This blanket refusal didn't just feel unfair. It collided directly with South Africa's newly minted, highly progressive constitution. As Justice Ackermann noted in the judgment, the law created a devastating double layer of discrimination. He called it overlapping or intersecting discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation and marital status. Because same-sex couples were legally prohibited from marrying, they were automatically excluded from the benefits of marital status. And because they were excluded from that status due to their sexual orientation, the law essentially trapped them in a permanent loop of inequality.
But the court went even further, delivering a profound emotional and philosophical core to their judgment regarding the right to human dignity. The justices explained that excluding same-sex couples sends a deeply demeaning message. It literally tells these individuals that they lack the inherent humanity to have their families respected. Imagine being told by your own government that you are somehow less worthy of the basic fundamental right to build a life with the person you love. This was a clear, severe violation of Section 10 of the South African Constitution.
Which brings us to Part 3, the equal graveyards problem, a massive legal trap.
Okay, so here is the massive plot twist. The court has decided the law is unconstitutional. Now, normally a court just strikes down an unconstitutional law, right? But if they completely strike down Section 25(5), nobody gets an immigration permit. The court actually referred to this dilemma as equality with a vengeance. Instead of elevating same-sex couples, the court would just be dragging heterosexual couples down into the mud with them. They'd be creating, as the judgment called it, equal graveyards. Everyone is equal, for sure, but equally disadvantaged.
So we have to ask, how exactly can the court fix this glaring omission without severing the legitimate protections already in the statute? Striking down the whole law would ruin the immigration system for everyone. The court absolutely needed a legal scalpel here, not a sledgehammer. They needed a way to rescue a flawed statute without causing absolute legislative chaos.
And that leads us to Part 4, the reading in remedy, the court's truly innovative fix. So instead of striking words out, the court decided to put words in. This is called reading in.
It's a constitutional remedy where a court inserts words directly into a piece of legislation to cure its unconstitutionality. Think of it like a surgeon. If a patient has a severe burn, the surgeon doesn't amputate the whole limb, right? They graft on new, healthy skin so the limb can function properly again. The court decided to graft new words into the Aliens Control Act.
Here are the exact, precise words the Constitutional Court inserted into Section 25(5). Right after the word spouse, they legally embedded the phrase, or partner, in a permanent same-sex life partnership. With a single stroke of the judicial pen, the law was instantly expanded. Same-sex partners were now granted the exact same preferential immigration status as married spouses, completely preserving the law for everyone else while finally curing the discrimination. But, the court had to be practical about this. If the government was going to grant these permits, administrators needed a way to actually prove the permanence of a same-sex life partnership, just like a marriage certificate proves a marriage. So the court provided these fascinating real-world criteria. They told immigration officials to look for things like a shared common abode, joint ownership or leases, shared living expenses, mutual financial support, provisions in each other's wills, or a formal partnership agreement. The court didn't just fix the law, they literally wrote the instruction manual on how to apply it.
Which brings us to the end of today's explainer and leaves us with a really powerful question to ponder. When laws fail to reflect the equality of society, should our courts simply erase them and wait for politicians to act? Or should they have the power to rewrite and rescue them right then and there? The South African Constitutional Court showed us that sometimes justice doesn't mean tearing down the old system. It means carefully, deliberately expanding it so that there's finally room for everyone. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning how our world is built.